Geki Sai Dai San. It is the most useful tool bridging the divide between closed hands and open hands, and between static, prearranged, and randori. Onegaishimasu. Welcome back to the Goju Ryu Karate Center. This morning, I'm going to do a variation of the Geki Sai Dai Ich or Geki Sai Dai Ni kata sequence. This is a kata that is called Geki Sai Dai San, where we have come from. It is different from the variation of Geki Sai Dai San that you will find in the Shoreikan lineage of Goju Ryu. Please, for the South Africans out there, the Shoreikan is not the same as the International Shorei Martial Arts Association. Okay, it is a separate lineage of Goju Ryu, stemming from Shikahiga Sensei, and then moving to Shikichi Toguchi Sensei, and then you have the Shoreikan organization. This variation of Geki Sai Dai kata is essentially an open hands version of the kata. And when we learned this, the best analogy we got given was that from Geki Sai Dai Ni to Saifa, there was quite a large jump in the techniques being used. You suddenly went from very much chambered, single-handed kind of concepts like a block, a punch, a block, to two hands and a leg, etc., working through the kata. And for a lot of students, they found this kind of difficult. So the people from ISMAA, falling under Sensei Arnold de Beer and having an influence from Sensei Brahm Pierns, and then from Ko Uhara Sensei in Okinawa. I think this is where this kata's origins, its root, its IP come from. Okay, so we're going to run through this kata. I find it extremely useful in helping students bridge the gap between a very closed-handed system towards a more open-handed system. So, basics first. Age uke, ko uke. Okay. Zuki, palm strike, or palm strike, or palm strike. Gedan barai, open hand palm block. Chudan uke, hiki uke, hiki uke, kaki uke, or washi uke. And then for some variation, open hand strike, pulling similar to Saifa, but to the center, actually closer to Kururumfa. Okay, so I'm going to run through the kata, and we'll break it down in various angles. Okay? Geki Sai Dai San. Okay, so Geki Sai Dai San, very, very basic kata. Where would I put it? White belt, yellow belt, orange to green, approximately there. So maybe at the end of that phase, all right? If you're doing lots of stripes, then you would introduce this kata as alongside Geki Sai Dai Ni. So once the students have Geki Sai Dai Ni, you would do Geki Sai Dai San, then you would start introducing Saifa kata. And it is a supplementary kata. I'm going to do the variations that we see. I'm just going to go to the end to start off with. It may be that you see the person first pivot and use kokutsudachi, pull, then shift back to cat stance. Or you may see that the person pulls and goes here, or this way, or this way. So if you happen to be training within the South African group, the International Shorei Martial Arts Academy, you may be doing one of those variations. This side, 1, 2, 3. I think it may have been 1, 2, 3, as well as the other variation. And then maybe very early days was 1, 2, 3, just like Geki Sai Dai Ni. We added in, for the sake of adding in things, because sometimes that's what senseis do when they're working on a supplementary kata. We added in the mawashi uke and the kake uke, so that we could bring in other techniques and start encouraging different training. For us, this is not part of the formal Goju Ryu list of katas. This is very much a supplementary kata. Now, where do supplementary kata fit in? Is it a good idea to have them? Are you allowed to change them? Are you allowed to break from what the master, the big sensei, the great Shihan has put out or not? And these are questions that instructors ask of themselves and sometimes students ask of the sensei. Number one, I think if you are an instructor and you have a legitimate lineage you follow, and if something is prescribed within your school, do as your sensei or your Shihan, your Saiko Shihan says. Okay? But honestly, if it is a supplementary kata, it's never going to be used in testing. It is then there as a tool for you to develop. And it's very important that you use it and you're open and honest about why you're doing it. Geki Sai Dai San bridges the gap between closed hand and open hand techniques. It's a really, really useful tool to have in your arsenal as a karate instructor to help your students get from the Geki Sai Dai Nis to the Saifas, and to help them understand that you now no longer have this permanent idea of chamber to the rib cage, but maybe that this hand is here. The kata has to be coupled with bunkai. So if you're not doing bunkai with the kata, you're just doing the kata for learning the kata, then there's something missing. The important thing is that it is coupled to bunkai, that you have an understanding that I might block, deflect, grab, pull, strike. Okay? And that the bunkai now resembles the kata a little bit in its kehon, in its foundational, fundamental phase. So for my friends who do pragmatic karate and pragmatic martial arts, you might say, hold on, some of that stuff doesn't really like gel. Okay? Imagine you did your kata the way that you trained your drill. And then you took all your drills and you lumped them together and you reassembled them as the kata. Then you might end up with something that looks a little bit untidy, but a lot more pragmatic. And it's based on the bunkai that you're training, the application, the interpretation of the attack and my desired response. That's reading the equation the other way around, by the way. And it's important from time to time as a karate instructor that you do this. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, if we're going to broach the divide between basics and foundation and fundamental work, kata and move, kakie, bunkai, and then to randori, one of the most important reasons why Geki Sai Dai San is so important is it helps you understand that you may be grabbing on and hitting a lot of the time. And this ties in with the ideas that are put forward that whenever a hand is coming to chamber, it never comes back empty-handed. That there's always something in it, either a gi top or a arm or a person's hair or whatever. And so if you take these ideas and you put them together and you start putting it into that big matrix, which we call Goju Ryu karate, you start seeing the value in this particular kata. So credit to the people who developed the kata. It's not my invention. I was a student training in their organization at that point in time. We have taken it. We have probably tweaked it between myself and my friend Sinsamorio. We have definitely tweaked the kata to make it work for us. It is a supplementary kata. It's not a formal grading kata, but it is the most useful tool in bridging the divide between closed hands and open hands, and between static, prearranged, and randori. And I think if you just weigh it up relative to those two ideas, it's going to be a fantastic thing to have in your kit. All right, I'm going to do the kata in a different direction so you can see what my hands are doing. Geki Sai Dai San. Oh, sorry, here. All right. And solar plexus. Chamber, then hit. Fingers down. This is not fully extended, closer. Cross the arms. Different from what would be done in OGKK, where the arm is single. You choose. I like this one. Okay. Bunkai. This one might be easier bunkai. How many supplementary katas do we have in the Goju Ryu Karate Center? As many as we can find that are useful. We have a Chishi kata, which is supplementary. Let me run through that as well. I'm using a dinky weight, so please forgive me. Okay. Chishi kata, inspired by the movements captured in Morio Higawana Sensei's first book on traditional Okinawan karate do. Okay. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is another supplementary kata. The idea behind the Chishi kata, very simply, is to equip you with a group of exercises that can be used for supplementary training purposes. So it's not creating a kata for the sake of having a kata, but the reason as an instructor to have this is we can run through the kata several times and we can then equip students with good form and basic idea of what encapsulates Chishi training. I trained with a dinky weight in my dojo. It's not the lightest weight. We have one size lower than this. This is 1 kilogram. This would be what I would generally use in the dojo for a fair amount of my training. This is a 5 kilogram Chishi. It's approximately 450 millimeter, 45 centimeter long shaft, and approximately 38 mil handle. It's relatively thin. I have very small hands. Okay, and the idea would be extracting from that kata. So once you've got the kata, you could practice from it. So you do a couple of reps. So you would be like, okay, kata, first movement, okay. And maybe you do 20 reps and you change hands, okay? And you would just extract from the kata. Maybe something that you would do with this that's a little different. You would probably hold it mid-shaft for some of the exercises, not on the end, because if you don't have long arms, you're going to whack yourself in the face. So it might be, you might combine. Okay, you may do okay, there are a number of good exercises that can be derived by using the Chishi in different ways. And that way, you can actually get great value in training with your Chishi. So the kata, basic ideas. Your personal training must be an escalation upwards from there. Okay, I'm going to call it a wrap. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you very much for joining us. We have got 2 supplementary kata today, Geki Sai Dai San and Chishi kata. Have an awesome week, everybody. Sayonara. Oh, by the way, don't forget to like, subscribe. We're rapidly approaching the 10,000 subscribers. We're at 9,400 this morning. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we will hit the big 10,000. Thank you very much for everybody who supports us. And I'm sure there will be a clip about a possibility of some online training coming up. Have an awesome one. Cheers.